Tottenham 0, Arsenal 2. North London is comfortably red, with Arsenal doing the double over Spurs for the first time in 9 years and sitting pretty at the top of the table. But enough of that, because you're probably here to better understand how Mikel Arteta got the better of Antonio Conte in what was a huge North London derby. Let's waste no more time at all and dive straight into things, shall we? Looking here at the tactical board, we have both teams, Arsenal on the left in red, of course, and Spurs on the right in white. Now, this is what you would call the on-paper formation of both sides. How things transpired were very, very different on the evening. First of all, let's take a quick look at how Arsenal lined up when attacking, because it was certainly a game of two halves, and Arsenal were very, very dominant in that first half. Now, the way Spurs tried to counter this is they used their three centre-backs here very narrowly, with Sessegnon tucking in and Doherty the same on the other side as well, creating five. Now, we know that Arsenal like to attack with a front five, attacking those front five lanes. So we've got the half space on either side and then out wide. So they did try to counter that. What they also try to do is bring Son and Kulusevski here, looking more at a 5-4-1 compared to that 3-4-3 that we saw on paper. Now, the undoing of Tottenham Hotspur here was the fact that they allowed Arsenal too much space between the defenders and the midfield, because we saw that typical front five of Odegaard, Saka, Nketiah, Xhaka, and Martinelli, with Partey playing as that anchor at the base of midfield, Gabriel and Saliba just behind, with White and Zinchenko tucking in. Now, what we did often see as well at times is Xhaka would drop into where Zinchenko is. Zinchenko would come out here on the left, and we would often see Martinelli operating in this left half space, which is something that we quite often see when the likes of Jesus has played in that first part of the season. Now, since the introduction of Eddie Nketiah, for example, we haven't seen that fluidity, because he does often like to play more centrally. But we are now starting to see different tactics implemented by Arteta to really try and switch things up. However, we did see sometimes Zinchenko playing in that typical role here as that sort of left inverted fullback. White often on that overlap. So we would see Arsenal playing in this 2-2-6 or 2-3-5. It was very, very fluid, and it was brilliant to see. Very, very nice to see indeed. So we've got some fantastic graphics to show you to really back this up. And I think the first goal that Arsenal scored, which was initially created from a pass by Thomas Partey over the top to Saka on the right-hand side, we can see here on screen now, we can see that formation of 2-3-5. So this is evidence that Arsenal really did implement this tactic against Spurs. Partey in the yellow circle in the middle of the picture, which is where the ball came from, with Saka running over the top. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that Spurs did allow Arsenal far, far too much space between the defenders and the midfield. And we can see here Xhaka, Nketiah, and Odegaard between those two lines, with far too much space to operate and open Spurs up. Now, one thing that I also didn't quite understand, which was definitely something that was implemented in that first half, is Conte playing really narrow with that back five, allowing Saka and Martinelli to not only get down the line, two of the most dangerous wingers in the Premier League this season, but we can see here as well that Spurs are playing with a very high line. Now, Martinelli and Saka are no slouches, two very, very quick players. Now, Sessegnon, who was marking Saka, is quite quick himself, but Doherty on the other side seemed like a bit of a mismatch with Martinelli. However, Arsenal did look to capitalise down at that right-hand side, and this is further backed up with the average passing shape that we can see here. Arsenal operating with that front four. We can see that Zinchenko and Xhaka, 35 and 34, operating in that left half space more often than not, allowing Arsenal to get forward. Arsenal playing with more people in midfield, 4, if you will, to try and counter how Spurs were playing when the likes of Son and Kulusevski were dropping deep to make those numbers up in midfield. But we can see here in the action areas for Arsenal, there is a lot of deep yellow on that right-hand side, which is where they really did try to hurt Spurs. And it's where we managed to open them up on 2 different occasions. And on the left-hand side, we can see Spurs' average passing shape as well. It does look quite familiar to that shape that we see on paper. However, number 2 and number 19, so Doherty and Sessegnon, the wing-backs, making up that 5, if you will. And this is further backed up in an image that we can see here with Spurs midfield, 4, Kane up top on his own, and Spurs that back 5. And I've highlighted in those yellow circles just how much time and space Arsenal were allowed in that first half to operate between the lines, and highlighting the amount of space Saka and Martinelli had out wide and in behind to really, really look to hurt Spurs. And funnily enough, the second goal came from a counter-attack with Spurs pushing forwards. So just to show what Spurs looked like, and this was very much the case in the second half as well, when, to be fair, they did dominate the second half. It was very, very much Arsenal looking to hit Spurs on the counter-attack. So what did that look like when they were looking to punish Arsenal? We did see Kane operating in this space here between Gabriel and Saliba. We did often see him coming out wide. Now, the reason for that is because Conte had clearly identified that Zinchenko was a weakness when defending. We see a lot of the time that when Arsenal fans predict the lineup before games, who should start, Kieran Tierney or Zinchenko? 2 very different defenders, Kieran Tierney being the better defender. But let me tell you, Zinchenko certainly held his own against Spurs on this occasion. We saw Son out on the left-hand side with Sessegnon doubling up, and obviously Doherty doing the same here. We saw Højbjerg getting forward more often with Sarr sitting just slightly deeper, hoping that Arsenal didn't hit them on the counter-attack. And then we saw a slightly wider formation here from Spurs, looking to make sure that if the likes of Martinelli got forward, Nketiah, Odegaard, see there's a good split here between these 2 players, Romero and Dyer. It's a very, very good split for Spurs. But what happened is in that second half is because of how Højbjerg was coming out to this left, Kulusevski, Kane and Doherty out on this right-hand side, it was forcing Martinelli back, really making sure that Arsenal were limited to counter-attacks. The same on this right-hand side with Saka. He was having to come in here. And then also, depending on which side of the pitch the ball was on, we did see Partey operating in here, Xhaka operating in here. There were even times when Nketiah was very, very deep himself. But it was because of the few chances that Spurs had in that first half, committing men forward, Arsenal managed to make the best of a counter-attack in the first half, although we did also see this set up from Spurs in the second. And to highlight this, this is the beginning of that second goal. We can see here the 2 white circles is Sessegnon and Sarr committing forward. We can see Saka here in that yellow circle. Loads of time and space. He picks up the ball from a pass from Partey. And all of a sudden, Arsenal are in a situation where there's 4 versus 3. Those 3 defenders of Spurs. Where does it go next? This is how it transpires. Saka gets into the space behind, committing both Sarr and Longley. We can see the 2 players either side of him there. We can see Dyer. He's having to mark Nketiah, leaving Odegaard with so much space on the edge of the box. One of the most informed, if not the most informed player in the Premier League at the moment. We can see Doherty on the right-hand side. He can't come towards the ball because he's marking Martinelli. And we can see here Sessegnon making a run across the pitch here to try and close him down. Romero doesn't want to commit because it will allow Nketiah space to run in behind. So Romero does actually stay where he is to try and block the shot. But there's just too much space between Romero and Dyer for Odegaard to use that wand of a left foot that he has to get the ball in that bottom right-hand corner. Low and hard, difficult for Lloris to get across to his left-hand side and get a hand on it. And it makes it 2-0 to the Arsenal. And at that point, we are absolutely in cruise control, which is absolutely great to see. So that's how things happened on the day. As I said, that second half was really touch and go at times for Arsenal. It was a game of two halves, with Arsenal dominating in the first, in cruise control dominating in the second, but with most of that sitting in Spurs' favour. They actually had 13 shots, I believe, and 60% possession in that second 45 minutes. But Arsenal were too difficult to break down, and Aaron Ramsdale made some fantastic match-winning saves, which brings me on to the final question of today's video. Who was the Arsenal man of the match? Let's have a quick look here. These were the four candidates that Arsenal put out on social media. Odegaard on the left with 86% passing accuracy, 2 key passes, 3 shots, and 1 successful dribble, but most importantly, 1 goal. Eddie Nketiah, very unlucky to not bag himself a goal on this particular occasion. 5 shots in total, a couple of very clear-cut chances, one of which in the second half, which could have made it 3-0 and completely dead the game off. An XG of 1.4, which is fantastic. Really unlucky not to get himself a goal, as I said. 83% passing accuracy, 2 dribbles completed, and 6 duels won. Aaron Ramsdale, 7 saves, of which 6 came from inside the box. Shots coming from inside the box from Tottenham Hotspurs. 2 high claims, 1 run out successful, and 2 clearances. And finally, Bukayo Saka, who was very unlucky not to get himself a goal. His effort in the first half going down as an own goal from Lloris. So call it a goal, call it an assist, whatever you want. But he also got an assist for Odegaard's goal as well. 77% passing accuracy, 2 key passes, 1 shot, and 4 successful duels. Very, very good performances from these 4. It could have been 5, 6, or 7 players on screen right now. But let me know down in the comments below, who was your Arsenal man of the match for the most recent North London derby? As I said, North London is red. And with the way some of the other teams are playing in London at the moment, I think it's quite comfortable to say that London is probably red. If you have enjoyed today's video, go ahead and smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new around here, because it's going to be one hell of a roller coaster ride between now and the end of the season. And I've got it all covered on Arsenal Analysed. For now, I'm JC, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe and take care.